I stood on my parents' doorstep, Eli squirming in my arms, and watched my mother's face harden into something I barely recognized. "We've already raised our children, Maya," she said, blocking the doorway. "Eli isn't our priority." The words hit me like a slap. I'd driven 40 minutes through rush-hour traffic, desperate and exhausted, to ask for one weekend of help. Just 2 days so I could attend the job interview that might save us after losing my position at the marketing firm 3 weeks ago. "Mom, please. It's just Saturday and Sunday." I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Behind her, I heard children's laughter. My sister Lena's twins, giggling and playing in the living room I'd spent my childhood in. The room that suddenly felt like foreign territory. "We're watching the girls tonight," Mom said, her voice flat. "They're easy. Your boy is different." Different. The word hung between us like an accusation. Eli was 3 years old, energetic and curious, but he wasn't difficult. He was just a normal toddler who asked questions and needed attention. "But you're already babysitting," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. "That's different," she replied, already closing the door. "Lena needs us." Through the narrow gap in the doorway, I saw Mom scoop up one of the twins, her face transforming into warmth and joy. The same face that had been cold stone moments before. "Come here, sweetie," she cooed, kissing the little girl's forehead. "Grandma missed you so much." My heart cracked. Eli reached toward his grandmother, his small hand stretching out. "Gamma," he said hopefully. She didn't even look at him. Lena appeared behind Mom, her perfectly styled hair and designer clothes making me suddenly aware of my wrinkled shirt and hastily tied ponytail. She took in my tearful face with a slight smirk. "Maybe if you'd married better, Mom would help you too," she said quietly, just loud enough for me to hear. "Jake's nice, but he's not exactly successful, is he?" The casual cruelty stunned me into silence. We'd never been close, but I hadn't realized she actually looked down on me. On my husband. On my entire life. "Lena, that's enough," Mom said, but there was no real reproach in her tone. If anything, she looked pleased. I turned away before they could see me completely break down. Eli patted my wet cheek as I buckled him into his car seat. "Mama sad?" he asked. "Mama's okay, baby," I lied. The interview was scheduled for Saturday morning at 9. By Friday night, I still hadn't found a babysitter. Every friend I called was busy. The daycare didn't offer weekend hours. My mother-in-law lived 6 states away. At midnight, I sat at my laptop, staring at the email from the hiring manager. The position was perfect, marketing director at a growing startup, good salary, benefits, room for advancement. Everything I needed to rebuild after the layoff. I typed slowly. "I'm sorry, but I need to reschedule due to a family emergency." The response came 20 minutes later. "Unfortunately, we're making our decision this weekend. We'll need to move forward with other candidates. Best of luck in your search." I read it 3 times before the words really sank in. The opportunity was gone. Because I couldn't find someone to watch my son for 4 hours. Because my own parents had refused to help. I cried quietly in the bathroom so Jake wouldn't hear. When I finally emerged, he was waiting in the hallway, arms crossed. "You're being too emotional about this," he said. "Maybe your parents have a point. Eli is a handful." Something inside me went numb. He's 3 years old, Jake. He's supposed to be a handful. Still, he shrugged. "You need to be more realistic about these things." I locked myself in the bedroom after that, whispering into the darkness, "I can't depend on anyone anymore." 3 days later, a certified letter arrived. The return address read Thompson and Associates, Estate Law. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a formal notice requesting my presence at their office to discuss matters pertaining to the estate of Mrs. Ruth Adelaide Monroe. Grandma Ruth. She'd passed away 6 months ago, and the funeral had been small and strangely rushed. Mom had handled everything, saying Grandma wanted it simple and private. I'd only seen Grandma a handful of times in the last decade. Mom always made excuses about why visits weren't convenient, why holidays were too stressful for an old woman. I believed her, guilt-heavy with my own busy life. The letter requested I come alone to receive personal documents and instructions left specifically for you. When Jake saw it that evening, he frowned. Why would she leave you anything? Your mom said the estate was already settled. I don't know, I admitted. I didn't think Grandma even remembered me. That night, I called Mom. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice tight. Maya. What is it? I got a letter from Grandma's lawyer. About her estate. The silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. That's already been handled, she finally said. Don't waste your time. But he specifically asked me to. I said it's handled, Maya. Let it go. She disconnected before I could respond. The law office was downtown, tucked between a coffee shop and a bookstore. Mr. Thompson was older, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled and offered me tea. Your grandmother spoke very fondly of you, he said, sliding a cream-colored envelope across his desk. She wanted you to have this personally. My name was written in Grandma's shaky handwriting, to Maya, the only one who ever saw me as family. I opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a small brass key and a note written on pale blue stationery. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and the truth needs finding. Look in the attic of the old house, the one I bought in 1962, the one your mother lives in now. Behind the third beam on the eastern wall, you'll find a box. The truth is buried there, along with my wishes for you. You were always the kind one, the one who visited when no one asked you to, who brought little Eli to see me those last months. Remember, blood doesn't make family. Love does. Grandma Ruth. I read it twice, my heart pounding. Those visits had been secret, stolen afternoons when I'd drive over with Eli while Mom was at her book club. Grandma had held my hand and told me stories about her childhood, about building her life from nothing. What does this mean? I asked Mr. Thompson. I can't say for certain, he replied carefully. But your grandmother was very specific about you receiving this key and note. I waited until Tuesday afternoon when I knew both my parents would be at their volunteer committee meeting. The spare key to their house still worked, Mom had never asked for it back. The house felt different without anyone home. Quieter. Colder, somehow. I'd grown up here, but it felt like trespassing now. The attic stairs creaked as I climbed. Dust motes danced in the shaft of light from the small window. I counted the beams, 1, 2, 3, and knelt beside the eastern wall. Behind the third beam, partially hidden by old Christmas decorations, I found a metal lockbox. The brass key fit perfectly. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, rubber-banded together. Bank statements. Property deeds. And a legal document that made my blood run cold. The house, this house, was in Grandma's name. She'd bought it in 1962, just like her note said. And according to the deed, she'd let my parents live here rent-free for 30 years. But that wasn't all. The bank statements showed monthly transfers from Grandma's account to my parents. Thousands of dollars every month, for decades. My parents hadn't built their comfortable life through hard work and savings like they'd always claimed. Grandma had funded everything, the house, the cars, the vacations they took every year while I struggled with student loans. At the bottom of the box was a document labeled Last Will and Testament, Draft. My hands shook as I read Grandma's draft will. The language was clear, her estate, including the house and all assets, would be divided according to compassion shown and love given freely, not obligation performed. A note was paper-clipped to it, this replaces all previous versions. To be filed with Thompson and Associates by December 2023. Grandma had died in January 2024. She'd run out of time. I took photos of everything with my phone, replaced the box exactly as I'd found it, and drove home in a daze. When I walked through the door, Jake was waiting, arms crossed. Your mother called. She knows you were at the house. How could she possibly? Security camera. She got an alert on her phone. He looked uncomfortable. Maya, she's really angry. She said you're snooping where you don't belong. It's not snooping when Grandma specifically told me to look. Maybe just let this go, he said quietly. We don't need their money. We'll figure it out. But it wasn't about the money. It was about the lies. The years of being told I was asking too much, that they'd sacrificed enough raising me, that they didn't owe me anything. While they'd been living off Grandma's generosity the entire time. Mom called an hour later, her voice shaking with rage. How dare you break into my house? It's not your house, Mom. It's Grandma's. The line went deadly quiet. That old woman didn't know what she was saying at the end. Mom finally spat. Everything we have is ours. We earned it. I couldn't sleep that night. Eli woke up crying from a nightmare, and I held him in the darkness, my mind spinning. The next morning, while going through the photos I'd taken of the lockbox contents, I noticed something odd. One of the bank statements referenced a storage unit, monthly payments to Secure Store Facility, Unit 247. I called the facility. Yes, Ruth Monroe had a unit. Yes, it was still paid through the end of the year. No, they couldn't tell me what was in it without proper authorization. I went anyway, bringing the key from Grandma's letter and her death certificate. The manager was sympathetic. Your grandmother was a sweet lady, she said. Came by every few months to check on things. Last time was November, I think. Unit 247 was climate-controlled and surprisingly full. Boxes were neatly labeled, Maya, age 5, Maya, school years, Maya, college. There were photo albums, my old drawings, report cards. Things I thought had been thrown away years ago. And in the back, on a small shelf, was an old camcorder. I took it home, hands trembling as I connected it to my laptop. The video was dated March 2023, 10 months before Grandma died. Her face appeared on screen, thin and tired but smiling. Hello, my dear Maya. If you're watching this, then you found my storage unit. Good girl. Grandma's voice on the recording was weak but clear. I want to thank you for the visits these past months. Your mother told everyone I was too sick for company, but you came anyway. You brought little Eli, and he made me laugh with his questions about everything. You never asked me for anything. You just came because you cared. I was crying now, remembering those afternoons. Grandma showing Eli her old jewelry box, telling him stories about each piece. The way she'd hold my hand and say I was doing a good job, even when I felt like I was failing at everything. I know what your mother has been doing, Grandma continued. The money I've given them over the years, it was supposed to help the whole family. But she's kept it all for herself and Lena. I've watched her turn you away when you needed help, watched her favor your sister's children over yours. It breaks my heart. She paused, her expression hardening with determination. So I'm changing my will. Everything I have, the house, the savings, all of it, goes to you. You're the one who showed me what family really means. Not the obligation kind, but the love kind. You have a kind heart, Maya, and that's worth more than anything I own. The video ended. The date stamp showed it was recorded 2 weeks after Mom had told me Grandma was too confused for visitors. I sat in stunned silence until Eli tugged on my sleeve. Mama crying again? Happy tears, baby, I whispered. These are happy tears. I drove to my father's office the next day, hoping he'd be different from Mom. That maybe he'd be the voice of reason. Dad looked uncomfortable when I walked in, like he'd been expecting me. Maya, before you start. Did you know Grandma wanted to change her will? I asked directly. He sighed heavily, removing his glasses to rub his eyes. Your mother mentioned something about it. But honey, your grandmother wasn't thinking clearly at the end. She seemed pretty clear on that video she made. His face paled. What video? I showed him. He watched in silence, his expression unreadable. When it ended, he handed my phone back without meeting my eyes. Your mother needed that money more, he said quietly. You have Jake. You'll be fine. That's your justification? That I have a husband? We made sacrifices raising you, Maya. Your grandmother understood that. Whatever she said on that video, the legal will stands. She left everything to your mother, and that's final. I stood up, my legs shaking. You both knew. You knew she wanted me to have it, and you took it anyway. We didn't take anything that wasn't ours, he said, but he still wouldn't look at me. Let it go, Maya. This isn't a fight you'll win. I walked out of his office and sat in my car for 20 minutes, crying so hard I couldn't see. Both of them. Both my parents had colluded to erase me from Grandma's wishes completely. Bills piled up on the kitchen counter, electricity, water, Eli's pediatrician appointment. Jake's salary barely covered rent and groceries. My unemployment benefits were running out. Jake and I fought more. Small arguments that exploded into bigger ones. You're obsessed with this inheritance thing, he said one night. Just let it go. Your family drama is stressing me out. My family drama? They stole from me. You don't know that. Maybe your grandma really did change her mind. I stared at him, seeing clearly for the first time how little he believed in me. How much easier it was for him to side with my parents than to stand beside me. I'm going to bed, I said quietly. A week later, Eli spiked a fever of 103. I called Mom in desperation, knowing Jake was on a business trip and I had no one else. Mom, please. Eli's sick and I need to take him to urgent care, but they won't let me bring him inside if he's contagious. Can you just sit in the car with him while I? She hung up mid-sentence. I ended up in the emergency room at midnight, alone, holding my burning hot son while he cried for daddy. The fluorescent lights were too bright. The waiting room was too cold. And I'd never felt more abandoned in my life. The next morning, exhausted and desperate, I went through Grandma's lockbox photos again. Hidden in the middle of a stack of old letters was another document, a second will, handwritten and dated December 2023. I, Ruth Adelaide Monroe, being of sound mind, do hereby declare this my final will and testament. My estate, including property at 1847, Willow Creek Drive and all associated assets, shall pass to whichever of my descendants lives by kindness and shows love freely. I have seen both choices. Only one deserves the inheritance. It wasn't signed, but it was witnessed. 2 signatures at the bottom, Mary Henderson, RN and Father Paul McCarthy. I took a photo and sent it to Mr. Thompson with shaking hands. He called me within the hour. Maya, this changes things. If we can prove this was your grandmother's final intent, and if we can locate these witnesses, we might be able to challenge the previous will. Might? Estate law is complicated. But this document, combined with the video you mentioned, gives us grounds to reopen the case. Are you prepared for what this will mean? Your family will fight back. I thought about Eli's fever, about the disconnected phone call, about years of being the forgotten daughter. I'm prepared, I said. Then let's begin. Mom found out within days. Small towns have no secrets, and someone at the law office must have talked. She called a family meeting, everyone except me. But I heard about it anyway, through a torrent of messages in the family group chat I'd forgotten I was still part of. Mom's message, Maya is trying to steal her dying grandmother's estate. After everything we did for that woman, after all the care we provided, Maya wants to take it all because she's jealous of Lena's success. Lena, I always knew she was greedy. She's trying to steal from our mother. Uncle Frank, this is shameful behavior, Maya. Aunt Rosemary, your poor mother. How could you? Cousin after cousin piled on. Screenshots of my greed spread through the family. No one asked for my side. No one questioned Mom's version of events. Jake showed me the messages silently. They've made you look really bad. And you believe them? He hesitated too long. I just think, maybe this isn't worth destroying your family over. They destroyed us first, I whispered. That night, alone in bed, I wondered if I was doing the right thing. Maybe I should just let it go. Maybe fighting for what Grandma wanted wasn't worth becoming the family villain. Then I remembered Eli, sick and crying in that waiting room, while my mother refused to even sit in a car to help us. I called Mr. Thompson. Keep going. The unexpected message came from Lena's husband, Brandon. We'd barely spoken in the 6 years they'd been married. Can we meet? Alone? Don't tell Lena. We met at a coffee shop across town. Brandon looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes. I need to show you something, he said, sliding a folder across the table. Bank statements. From your parents' accounts. I opened it slowly. The documents showed regular withdrawals, large ones, going back years. Thousands of dollars at a time. They've been taking money from your grandmother's accounts even after she died, Brandon explained. Lena told me your mom had power of attorney and was managing the estate, but these withdrawals kept happening after probate closed. How did you get these? Lena keeps financial records in her home office. She doesn't know I made copies. He looked guilty. I know this makes me seem terrible, but I can't keep watching this happen. I want my kids to see what honesty looks like, not, whatever this is. Why are you helping me? Because you brought Eli to visit your grandmother when everyone else stopped going. Lena used to complain about it, said you were sucking up for inheritance money. But I saw how you were with Mrs. Monroe. You actually cared. He pushed the folder toward me. Take it. Use it. I don't know what happens after, but at least the truth will be out. Mr. Thompson's face was grim as he reviewed Brandon's documents. This is fraud, he said quietly. Misappropriation of estate funds. If we present this to the probate court, your mother could face criminal charges. I don't want her arrested, I said quickly. I just want what Grandma intended. I understand, but the court will see this evidence regardless. We're building a case that shows pattern and intent. Your mother systematically excluded you from your grandmother's wishes while enriching herself. We spent the next week gathering more evidence. Mr. Thompson tracked down Mary Henderson, the nurse who'd witnessed Grandma's handwritten will. She remembered it clearly. Mrs. Monroe was very specific, Mary told us. She said her daughter Clara had become cold and materialistic, and that Maya was the only one who visited without wanting something. Father McCarthy confirmed the same story. Ruth asked me to witness the document. She was completely lucid and determined. She said she needed to fix a mistake before it was too late. With every piece of evidence, the case grew stronger. And my mother grew more desperate. She called twice a day now, alternating between rage and fake sweetness. You know we love Eli, right? She said one evening, her voice syrupy. He's such a precious boy. I've been thinking we should spend more time with him. I said nothing. Maya? Are you there? I'm here. Come over Saturday. Let's talk about this like adults. Bring Eli, I'll make his favorite cookies. Saturday arrived with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Jake offered to come with me, but I declined. This was something I needed to do alone. Mom opened the door with a practiced smile, arms open for a hug I didn't return. The house smelled like fresh cookies and deception. Maya. And there's my sweet grandson. She scooped up Eli, who looked confused but allowed the attention. Grandma has presents for you. Dad emerged from the den, awkward and uncomfortable. Lena sat on the couch, her expression unreadable. They'd prepared a whole show. Gifts for Eli, expensive toys from the store he loved. A check made out to me for $5,000, laying casually on the coffee table. Just a little something to help you through this rough patch, Mom said, her voice dripping with false generosity. We're family, Dad added. Family helps each other. I watched the performance, feeling detached. Like I was seeing them clearly for the first time, the manipulation, the conditional love, the transactional nature of every interaction. There's just one small thing, Mom said, sliding papers across the table. Some legal documents Mr. Thompson sent us. If you could just sign this waiver stating you have no claim to Grandma's estate, we can put all this nastiness behind us. Of course, I said calmly, picking up the papers. I excused myself to the bathroom, papers in hand. And there, I pulled out my phone and started recording. When I returned, they were whispering urgently. Once she signs the waiver, we're safe, Mom was saying. Thompson can't do anything without her cooperation. What about the bank records Brandon gave her? Lena hissed. We'll claim they're forged. Who's going to believe? I cleared my throat, and they jumped apart like guilty children. I need to use the restroom again, I said, smiling. Eli, come with Mama. I left the house 10 minutes later, and signed papers in hand and a recorded conversation on my phone. #17. Mr. Thompson's office felt different this time, charged with possibility. This recording, combined with the bank statements and witness testimony, is more than enough, he said. We can file a formal challenge to the estate settlement, and we can prove your mother acted in bad faith. What happens next? We request an emergency hearing to freeze the estate assets pending investigation. Then we present everything, the video, the handwritten will, the fraud, the recorded conversation. The judge will decide if the original probate was valid or if it needs to be reopened. My hands were shaking. How long? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Maya, I need you to be prepared. This will get ugly. Your family will say terrible things. Are you ready for that? I thought about Grandma's voice on that video, telling me I had a kind heart. I thought about Eli, who deserved better than grandparents who only loved conditionally. I'm ready, I said. The next morning, the legal filing went through. By afternoon, my phone exploded with messages. Mom, Lena, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, all furious, all accusing me of destroying the family. Jake sat beside me as I read them, his face pale. This is really happening. Yes, I said simply. This is really happening. The family group chat imploded spectacularly. Mom posted long, rambling messages about my betrayal. Lena shared old photos of us as children, captioned with "I thought we were sisters." But something unexpected happened. Lena and Mom started turning on each other. Lena, you told me this was handled. You said there was no way she could challenge the will. Mom, I did handle it. If Brandon hadn't stolen those bank records. Lena, Brandon didn't steal anything. You left them on my desk. This is your mess. The argument spiraled. Other family members jumped in, some defending Mom, others questioning what really happened. Uncle Frank messaged me privately, something doesn't add up with your mother's story. I stayed silent, watching the family structure I'd known my whole life crumble in real time. Part of me felt guilty. Part of me felt free. Jake read over my shoulder. They're destroying themselves. I'm not doing anything, I said quietly. I'm just telling the truth. The hearing date was set for 3 weeks away. In the meantime, the court froze access to Grandma's estate accounts. Mom couldn't withdraw anything. Couldn't sell the house. Couldn't touch any of it until the judge made a ruling. Her frantic calls became daily harassment. You're ruining everything. Your father might lose his business because you're being selfish. But I'd learned to recognize manipulation. I didn't respond. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, wood-paneled and formal. Mom and Dad sat on one side with their lawyer, looking furious and afraid. I sat on the other with Mr. Thompson, my hands clenched in my lap. The judge was a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no patience for dramatics. Mr. Thompson presented our case methodically, the video testimony, the handwritten will, the witness statements, the bank records showing continued withdrawals after Grandma's death, and finally, the recording from my parents' house. Mom's face went through stages of shock, denial, and finally, pale recognition. When her lawyer tried to argue that the documents were forged, Father McCarthy and Nurse Henderson both testified under oath about witnessing Grandma's final will. Mrs. Monroe was absolutely clear, Mary said firmly. She wanted Maya to have everything. She said Clara had forgotten what family meant. The recorded conversation played in the silent courtroom. Mom's voice, crystal clear, once she signs the waiver, we're safe. When it ended, the judge looked at my mother with open disgust. Mrs. Caldwell, did you or did you not withdraw funds from your mother's estate after probate closed? Mom's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear. I was managing expenses, she stammered. Without court approval? Without documentation? The judge shuffled papers. This isn't a gray area. This is fraud. The judge called a 15-minute recess. When we returned, her expression was stern. I've reviewed all evidence presented. It's clear that Ruth Monroe intended to change her will to benefit her granddaughter, Maya. It's equally clear that Mrs. Clara Caldwell was aware of these intentions and took steps to prevent their execution. Mom gripped Dad's hand, her face white. Furthermore, the evidence of financial impropriety is overwhelming. Mrs. Caldwell, you will be facing separate civil and possibly criminal proceedings regarding the misappropriated funds. The judge opened a file, pulling out a document I recognized, the handwritten will. While this will was not formally executed, the video testimony and witness statements establish clear testamentary intent. Combined with evidence of fraud in the original probate, I'm ruling that the estate of Ruth Adelaide Monroe be reopened and redistributed according to her final wishes. She looked directly at me. Ms. Maya Torres, pending final documentation, you are hereby named primary beneficiary of your grandmother's estate, including the property at 1847, Willow Creek Drive and all associated assets. The room spun. Mr. Thompson squeezed my shoulder. Mrs. Caldwell, you have 30 days to vacate the property. All estate funds will be frozen until Ms. Torres takes possession. Do you understand? Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Dad had to physically support her as they stood. This isn't fair. Lena shouted from the gallery. That's our mother's house. It was never your mother's house, the judge said coldly. It was Ruth Monroe's house. Court dismissed. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within hours, family members who'd been silent through the whole ordeal suddenly had opinions. Aunt Rosemary called, "You've made your mother homeless. How can you live with yourself?" I hung up without responding. Uncle Frank, surprisingly, sent flowers with a note, "Your grandmother would be proud." The hardest part was watching Lena. She showed up at my apartment 2 days after the ruling, her face blotchy from crying. "You've destroyed everything," she said. "Mom's losing the house. Dad might have to sell his business to pay legal fees. Was it worth it? Was proving you were right worth destroying our entire family?" I looked at her, my sister, who I'd once shared a room with, who I'd taught to ride a bike, who'd grown into someone I barely recognized. "You let Mom refuse to babysit my son while she watched your daughters. You smirked when she turned me away. You called me greedy for wanting what Grandma intended for me." My voice was steady. "I didn't destroy this family, Lena. I just stopped pretending it was something it wasn't." She left without another word. Jake, surprisingly, was different after the ruling. Warmer, more supportive. But the shift felt hollow, like he'd only believed in me once I'd won. "I'm proud of you," he said one night. "Are you?" I asked. "Or are you just relieved that I'm not a lost cause anymore?" He couldn't answer. And that told me everything I needed to know. Moving into Grandma's house, my house now, felt surreal. The movers came on a Saturday morning, and I walked through rooms full of memories with Eli's hand in mine. "This Gamma's house?" he asked. "It's our house now, baby. Grandma wanted us to have it." The inheritance was substantial. After settling estate debts and taxes, there was enough to pay off my student loans, establish a college fund for Eli, and start the business I'd always dreamed of. I used part of the money to open a daycare center. Not a fancy one, a warm, welcoming place for working parents who needed help. Affordable rates. Flexible hours. No child turned away because they were too much work. I named it Ruth's Place. The business grew faster than I expected. Word spread about the quality of care, the nurturing environment, the fact that I actually understood what struggling parents needed. 6 months after opening, I hired 3 employees. A year later, we expanded into a second location. I never advertised my story, but somehow people knew. Parents would come in, their eyes red from crying, and say, "I heard you understand what it's like to have no one to help." And I did. Because I'd been there. My life rebuilt itself piece by piece. New friends. New routines. New purpose. Jake and I separated quietly. No drama, no big fight. Just a mutual recognition that we'd both been holding on to something that had ended long ago. He moved out in March, promising to stay involved with Eli, and for once, he kept his promise. 18 months after the court ruling, on a cold Tuesday morning, I was in my office at Ruth's Place when someone knocked on the door. Mom stood there, looking smaller than I remembered. Older. She was wearing clothes I didn't recognize, cheaper, less stylish than her usual wardrobe. "Maya," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" I almost said no. Almost told her to leave. But something in her expression stopped me. 5 minutes, I said. She sat across from my desk, hands trembling in her lap. "I've been working at the library. Part-time. Your father and I are renting a small apartment near the grocery store." I said nothing. "I've been in therapy," she continued. "Court mandated at first, but I've kept going. My therapist says I need to take accountability." She took a shaky breath. "You were right about everything. I was cruel to you. I favored Lena. I took advantage of Grandma's love, and I tried to take what she wanted you to have." "Why?" I asked. "Why did you hate me so much?" "I didn't hate you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I was jealous. You were always so self-sufficient, so capable. You didn't need me the way Lena did. And when Grandma clearly preferred you." She wiped her eyes. "I handled it by pushing you away. By convincing myself you didn't deserve help. It was easier than admitting I was failing as a mother." I let Mom cry for a minute, processing her words. Part of me wanted to stay angry. Part of me was just exhausted from carrying the hurt. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she said. "I know I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know that you were right. You've become everything I wasn't: kind, generous, successful. You built something beautiful here." She gestured around the office. "Grandma would be so proud." "She left me a letter," I said quietly. "In the lockbox. She said kindness was the real inheritance." Mom nodded, fresh tears falling. "She tried to teach me that. I just never listened." I stood up, signaling our time was over. "I forgive you, Mom. But that doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. Eli isn't your priority, remember? You said that yourself." She flinched. "I know. I was wrong." "Yes, you were. And he's not your responsibility anymore. He's mine." I opened the door. "But maybe someday, if you keep working on yourself, you can be his grandmother. Actually be it, not just play the role when it's convenient." She nodded and left without another word. I watched her walk to her old sedan, not the luxury car she used to drive, and felt something release in my chest. Not quite forgiveness. Not quite peace. But maybe the beginning of both. 3 years after the court ruling, I stood in the backyard of Grandma's house, my house, watching Eli play with the new swing set. He was 6 now, confident and happy, unaware of all the drama that had surrounded his early years. Ruth's Place had grown to 5 locations across the state. I'd been featured in business magazines, interviewed on local news, invited to speak at entrepreneurship conferences. But none of that mattered as much as the thank you cards parents left in my office, or the kids who ran to hug me every morning. Mom and Dad came to Eli's birthday party that year. They stayed on the edges, respectful of boundaries I'd set. Mom brought a homemade cake, not fancy, but made with effort. Dad played catch with Eli for exactly 15 minutes before Eli ran off to play with friends. It wasn't a fairy tale reconciliation. They'd never be the grandparents I'd once hoped for. But they were trying, and I was learning that trying mattered. Lena and I hadn't spoken in 2 years. I'd heard through Uncle Frank that she'd divorced Brandon and moved across the country. Sometimes I wondered if we'd ever repair what was broken. Mostly, I accepted that some relationships weren't meant to survive the truth. That evening, after the party ended and Eli was asleep, I found the last envelope in Grandma's lockbox, one I'd saved, unopened, for when I needed it most. Inside was a single sheet of paper in her handwriting. My dearest Maya, kindness is the true inheritance. Money and houses and things, they come and go. But the way you treat people, the love you give freely, the compassion you show when it costs you something, that's what lasts. That's what you pass down. You proved that. Thank you for loving this old woman when she needed it most. Thank you for being you. All my love, Grandma Ruth. I held the letter to my chest and cried, happy tears this time, healing tears. My phone buzzed with a message from a new parent, thank you for giving my daughter somewhere safe to be herself. You've changed our lives. I looked around at everything I'd built, not just the business, but the life, the purpose, the peace. This was Grandma's real gift. Not the house or the money, but the proof that kindness wins. That love matters. That doing the right thing, even when it's hard, leads somewhere beautiful. Eli called from his room, asking for water. I smiled and went to him, my son, my future, my reason for fighting. For once, I didn't need anyone's approval. I already had everything that mattered.